So finally, I'm going to summarize what we just talked about in the last three screencasts you watched. So here's a summary of everything that's happening in photosynthesis, remembering that this is a grana, and outside of the grana is your stroma, and inside the grana is your thylakoid space or thylakoid lumen. What we had happen at the beginning was water split. Water splits into, watch my cursor, hydrogen ions, oxygen atoms, and ions initially, and then atoms to make O2 to be released into the air, and 2 electrons. And those 2 electrons in photosystem 2 get energized by light. So light energizes them, they move up, and then they get passed on this cytochrome enzyme system to photosystem 1. When they get passed through this system, with them they bring or draw hydrogens in, because the negative electron charge attracts to the positive hydrogen charge, and together they get pulled towards the thylakoid lumen, and that's going to pump hydrogens inside. Now I'm going to jump to the last part that we talked about. When those hydrogens get pumped inside and they build up, they also need to get pumped out. So they have to get pumped out of the membrane. And when they do that, the only way they can go through to get outside the membrane is through the ATP synthase complex. And as they get pumped out, we produce ATP. So the hydrogens get pulled in because of the electrons, and then there's too many of them on the inside, then they get pumped out. And when they get pumped out, we produce ATP. The electrons move to photosystem 1. At photosystem 1, light will strike it, energize those electrons, and then those electrons will fuse NADP positive with hydrogens to make NADPH molecules. The NADPH molecules and the ATP molecules are your 2 main products that come from the light reaction that are going to get used in what we call the dark reaction or the Calvin cycle. The oxygen, the other product that is from the light reaction, gets released into the atmosphere, and that's what respiring organisms are going to breathe in. The NADPH and the ATP are going to drive this Calvin cycle, and you can see a summary of it up here. So you have light coming into the light reaction, water coming into the light reaction, oxygen's being released from the light reaction, NADPH is being released from the light reaction, and ATP. They're going to drive this Calvin cycle. ATP driving this cycle, when it uses up its energy, it's going to form ADP. And so have a look. This ADP is going to come back to the light reaction so that it can make more ATP through this chemiosmotic process. The NADPH is going to drop off a hydrogen in the Calvin cycle to help make sugar, and when it drops off the hydrogen, it becomes NADP positive. It's going to head back to the light reaction to go pick up another hydrogen. And so this is a constant cycle. The other thing we haven't talked about yet is carbon dioxide. If we're looking at our reactants and products of photosynthesis, we've talked about everything now except for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is what's going to go into the dark reaction, and we'll talk about that in about a week or so. Carbon dioxide goes into the dark reaction to help make sugar. And ATP and the NADPH from the light reaction are going to be going into the dark reaction to also help make sugar. The steps in which that happens, we'll talk about later. It's just the light reaction that we really need to understand, and how the light reaction and the dark reaction are dependent on each other. Okay, so there's the summary of photosynthesis. You can watch again, part 1, part 2, and then this summary, and hopefully you'll understand it for Monday. Hope you're having a good weekend.